Kia ora, Yvonne.
Kia ora.
It's awesome to have you here at Pathways in the office and to be able to chat with you in person.
Yeah.
Even though we couldn't be in person at Soul Day, but yeah, I'm stoked that you're still able to share with us and share your experiences and your know-how with us. And yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. I would love if you just want to share a little bit about yourself. Who are you and how did you get to be here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Who am I? Ko Yvonne tohu ingoa. My name's Yvonne. I didn't kind of grow up in church, so story a little bit different to a lot of people that I meet. Just ended up finding or really having experience with God for the first time at a BYM Easter camp. An amazing place for young people, and was just captivated by the music there, which we know now to be worship. At the time, I was like, what is this music? It's crazy. I was a musician already kind of growing up, played the piano, classical piano, did all the grades, that kind of thing. Taught myself guitar and started to try and write songs and all that kind of stuff before. And I was in my last year of high school and was at this Easter camp and was really captivated and felt like, God had drawn me in with music, spoke to me, and I kind of left that camp going, okay, I probably need to see a little bit more of what church is and who this Jesus is and what this is all about, because there were 5,000 people here and they were super into it, and is there something I'm missing out on? So I threw myself into every ministry at church. I was at North Cross Church at the time, and I went to every Sunday service, every life group, every youth group, every Sunday night service. Like, it was just crazy, a crazy year. Became a Christian a couple months after that and gave my life. And essentially in that whole process, jumped onto the team, didn't really know what was going on, didn't know any of the songs, didn't know who Chris Tomlin was, all these.
What?
Crazy. And then kind of God just used that year exponentially, and I grew this amazing love for music. And as I look back now, and that was kind of over 10 years ago now, I kind of look back and go, wow, God was actually preparing me for this role as a worship pastor, all through when I was learning piano, all through when I picked up those, the guitar, electric guitar, and started loving music. This is why. And so it's a pretty incredible journey to look back on. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. That's really cool. So what does your role look like at Grace City at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm the worship pastor there, and I also lead our services and communication teams across our campuses. So looking after the worship team, production team, and also helping to curate kind of services and things like that.
Nice. Very cool. Now, I mean, obviously everyone's aware of the last 2 years and how that has kind of created a shift in how we've been able to gather, which meant that online gatherings, online services have become much more of a, I guess, commonplace part of how we worship together when we can't meet physically in particular. So whether that means services are pre-recorded or live streamed, I guess, I mean, even sometimes we're gathering physically and it's being live streamed at the same time. So there's all these different dynamics now as a worship leader to kind of think, okay, when I'm leading and I know people are like, I can't see them. Like how does this shift? Does this shift the way that we lead worship? Or are there things that we can do to help make the people that we can't see, who are potentially in their living rooms or in a car or on their phone, just like watching, or wherever they might be, what can we do to help make these times of gathered online worship meaningful and help people feel comfortable or inspired to participate? So that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. So can you tell us a little bit about what that's looked like for you as you navigated the last couple of years, which would have started at North Cross and now Grace City? How did that kind of, what was your journey as a worship leader like as you kind of encountered this online aspect of it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm still a new worship leader, people like yourself and others who have been doing this much longer than me. So when, was it March 22nd, 2020 came by, being involved in online services kind of every week, and those lockdowns mean that those exact dates. When that came around and we were online, it was like a big kind of, what do we do? No one had ever been in this space. So at North Cross at the time where I was, we just gathered a 5-6 person team. We're like, okay, let's just transform our cafe into essentially like a recorded worship space. So we like pulled a desk out that we'd used in some auditorium and then tried to kind of get just some recordings. We didn't have anyone who knew how to mix them or anything like that, and just pulled as many cameras as we could and to try and create some sort of worship space. So I asked the question, well, how many songs are we playing? Or are we doing sets, or are we doing individual songs? So what we ended up doing was a mix of both. We had no idea what we were recording for. Was it just one Sunday? Was it for multiple Sundays?
Sure.
So we just kind of got together. I remember it being a Friday night, and we recorded about 8 songs. So the first one was kind of like, and I think this is probably one of the first points, is it was for who the audience or the congregation was that was watching on, what would they be feeling or experiencing as they're watching this online service. They'd never kind of done this before. So we kind of started with our national anthem and, and praying for our country and, this season that we're in, that's just so bizarre, and went to some other songs like, What a Beautiful Name and songs like Cornerstone, Great Is Thy Faithfulness, that really anchored us into actually God is here and he's working. And even though it's unknown, he's done it so many times before in the Bible, we have no idea what's going on. And he's going, I've got this plan. How do we remind our people that this is, he is good and he is with us. So that was kind of our set portion. And then we were like, well, while we're here, we have no idea how long we were going to be in lockdown. Let's just try and bank up all these other songs as well.
Sure.
So we came out with 8 that session, and quickly did a turnaround edit for Sunday service, and then Monday announcement that we were going to be in lockdown for, I don't know, 12 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
So that Monday night, we were like, all right, team back in, let's do another 8 or so, as many as we can get in that time. And crazy thing is that was our worship for the next 9 weeks or so, because we couldn't gather in what was level 4, even in level 3 we couldn't do anything like that. So that's kind of how it started for us at North Cross. And then it got a bit interesting in another lockdown when, okay, so we'd used all these songs like so many times now, and the restrictions meant that we couldn't bring everyone together again. So we kind of just had to go, well, I have gear at home. Who else has gear? And maybe we can give examples of some of these videos, but we were like, who else has gear on our team? And we have to kind of just do it from home remotely, send in tracks, try and sync them all up somehow, and put out like kind of these vlog, YouTube-y style worship videos. So that was interesting. I had a few people in the house that I was in, some on the team, some not really, and was just like, guys, let's just get in because it looks better where there's other people kind of worshiping, and just like, let's just kind of worship, even though it's real weird and there's cameras and no one's here. So that was kind of a completely different experience as well. So and we can talk a little bit later about the kind of gear that was used for those kind of different environments.
Because obviously you have experience and expertise in camera gear and video gear and recording. So, she's going to share some of that with us shortly. But that's awesome. So kind of 2 years on from that, did anything change with how you maybe interacted with people, or the way you spoke, or the way you kind of led the songs? Like now, if you were to lead some online corporate worship, that what are some of the things you might do that would be different maybe to like a in-person one? Totally. I think one of the biggest things that I learned, and the great thing about online worship, is that
you have a reference of like your growth over that time. So even in the last 2 years, I look back at the first ones and I go, man, my eyes were shut like way too much, and it felt really dynamically, it was just a little bit like too flat. It didn't engage the way that I think we need it to through a TV or a screen. And some of the key things was that people are watching on, they're actually not necessarily singing with you. So in an in-person service, I think for our context, we have a really singing church. They just love to sing. So actually what I kind of do on stage doesn't really change the fact that they're going to sing and they're going to experience God, and they just love being in that space. What we found with online is that a lot of people, even if they were worshippers and loved music, they actually weren't watching the screen singing along, even though that's kind of what we hoped that they would do.
Sure.
So over the years, kind of going, okay, so if they're not singing along, we still kind of want them to sing along. So does that change how I lead? And so in some ways, depending on your style, I think we learned that if we were to encourage people to sing, even though it felt really awkward, especially if you're home alone with a camera and you're kind of like, come on, sing with me. It's super awkward. So we kind of had to get past the awkward stage and kind of think, we're trying to glorify God with what we're doing here, and we want people to really enter in and experience this with us. Actually, more invitation felt like it landed a bit better for some of our congregation. And we do that in person as well, but I think there was a different level of it, as well as like eye contact. It's like super bizarre. But yeah, we found that people felt quite distant from the screen when people were worshiping with their eyes shut. It's just kind of just strange. I mean, I guess sometimes we get this in person as well, but just a bit of distance. So it was a lot of kind of just, I see you, and welcoming you in by giving some of that right down the camera, camera barrel, eye contact.
That's really cool, because I mean, because we don't have that physical connection point, eye contact becomes key, because it would make it's like another avenue of connection.
I know,
probably one of the most important ones, right?
Yeah.
When you're watching something, so that's really cool. Did you ever name the awkwardness? Were you ever like, this might be super awkward, but we'd love for you to sing along.
Yeah, definitely. And there's also been just clips of videos from some of the people in our team who give like quite a lot of eye contact in a video, and we kind of just go, oh, that's funny. Kind of left it in because it was so awkward. Like, it's, it's part of the authenticity of the moment.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think one of the other things as well is, and again, we do this in person, but I think even more so online, is kind of giving context to why we're singing, or what we're singing, the purpose of that time. Just remembering as well, and a lot of this comes to, who is your audience? Is this for just like a worship night in the middle of the week, or is this for a Sunday service? Is this for church people or non-church people? Giving the context of, hey, we're about to go into a song like This Is Amazing Grace, and then actually giving a bit of context for why we're singing that in that moment. And songs kind of like, I mean, in the season of COVID, thinking people wanting to know that God is good, God is faithful, He's over everything, any kind of discomfort that they have, we want them to be reminded of who God is. So just kind of, talking about that, bringing out the word, and giving a bit of context and encouragement through that before people sang, and that often encourage that kind of engagement as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, because then it doesn't become just something you've like inserted into an online service. It's actually part of the journey of worship that we're wanting to lead people on, and that's awesome. That's really cool. What were some of the things you found? I mean, we've already talked about the awkwardness, but was there anything you found really challenging about this season of online?
Lots of things. There was a season where we kind of ran out of these kind of cafe, kind of full band type videos, and the church was really wanting some like real freshness of worship. So we kind of took some of the gear from church, brought it home, and this was a time where we couldn't meet with other people outside of our household. So we had a couple of people, thankfully, in my household who were on the team, and the three of us were just putting out new songs and new sets every week. So we would do it week by week as opposed to all at once. And that got really tough because it's just us with like 2 cameras trying to like play just with a guitar and vocals, and we had to bring something fresh, and there was just anyone just trying to survive lockdown outside of all of this. It was pretty tough, the isolation. So we felt like we had to be, there was a lot of pressure to be in this space that we needed to be in, and God was gracious through it all, and our church was gracious through it all. But sometimes you come to the recording time for a set and you're like, I don't have anything for church today, and this is actually really hard.
Wow.
It's hard to pick songs. It's hard to smile and engage. And so we were like, well, what do we do in this space? And that happens in person as well. So I guess we learned, God has put us in here for a season at this time, and we bring the best that we can, as authentic as we can be, and just hope that he uses it for his glory. So those moments were tough.
Yeah, for sure. And I think God can do something. I mean, there's that beautiful verse that says, in our weakness he is strong. And I think when everybody is feeling the same disconnect and the same, unsettledness and isolation, like, I think it's really meaningful for people to be led, to be invited to worship in the midst of that with someone who totally gets it.
Exactly.
As well. So, So I'm sure we can all relate, Yvonne, to your, it's not just you.
Yeah, I'm glad.
So when we think about gathered worship online, and whether that's live streaming a live service, like with people there anyway, or whether it's a service that's totally produced for online, what are some ways that we can encourage participation? I mean, you've already mentioned invitation and eye contact, but like for those who feel uncomfortable singing, like, I mean, should they be singing? Like, is there ways that we can encourage them to participate, like singing or not singing, or I don't know, how can we, I guess my question is, how can we encourage like meaningful participation in the times of worship, in our worship services that we lead? Are there other things that we can do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, we've kind of tried different things before. Like sometimes I've seen churches ask people to stand, and sometimes that invitation really helps people engage. Sometimes it just makes people go, I don't want to.
Nope.
I think maybe something that I found helpful, and I'm sure others will have other ideas, but in my experience, I think it's just not having that expectation that people are going to sing the same way they might when they're in person. So we just talk about like pre-recorded for now. If you're just sitting with a bunch of cameras and you're trying to engage people, I think it's those spoken times that really make a difference. And the thing is with worship is that that we know is that just because people aren't singing doesn't mean they're not engaging and entering into that space. And so it might be an encouragement to meditate on the words. It might be an encouragement for them to just close their eyes as they listen if they're not going to sing, but just kind of speaking out some of those different ways that people can participate.
Awesome.
And I think along with that, I found that the energy that comes from you as the worship leader or the vocalist or instrumentalist, that energy flows through the camera and through your mix as well. So I found that sometimes and this is a little bit technical now, but like sometimes if I'm not feeling super confident in leading, and then the dynamics aren't quite there, everything feels a bit, and God's grace works in it and through it, of course, but everything can feel a little bit like, oh, should I sing? Should I not sing? People get a bit confused. But if you have, which is why I invited like our household to join, because if you have other people and that's really visible that other people are engaged, that often encourages engagement.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think sometimes for in-person we talk about, presence and just the way that even you stand on stage or hold a microphone, how that can change how people engage. I think it's a similar thing for online as well. Just the notion of smiling, or some like harder strums for that bridge, and then dropping it down and really moving things around, engage an online audience, I think. Not sure, but I think a little bit better. Yeah, cool. And realizing that people online as well have a little bit of a shorter attention span. So that's probably another thing to help engagement is maybe in person we can linger a little bit longer and allow God to move in that space. I think online we could probably still do that, but there might not be as much grace for that, because you just don't know when people are clicking in, clicking out, that kind of thing.
And there's no kind of way to gauge where people are at. So save them 8-minute vision for when we're not in lockdown.
Exactly.
Did you ever try anything that wasn't like music related, so something that was like, I guess, a worshipful experience but not music?
Totally. I think just this the verse comes to mind. I think when I think of anything around services, I think of Romans 12, offering your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. But then the second part in verse 2, don't conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so when I think worship in its entirety, not just singing, I think what does God want to do to help transform people by the renewing of their minds? And that's often through scripture, sung scripture, said scripture. And so, some other kind of worship elements that we've done are benedictions in Māori or English, spaces where maybe someone will read out a verse and others will be encouraged to read with them. So I know for Easter with Grace City, we had a Good Friday service where one of our narrators was reading out a passage, but we'd actually sent out packs for people to have in their homes, and inside that pack was a scripture reading, just a way for them to engage in the service, along with like a candle to light at a particular time and a communion elements. And they were asked to get a basin of water, like a bucket, and a cloth to like wash their hands, and as a symbol of what Christ had done, washing us clean, and just other elements like that I think help people engage in that worship space.
Cool. That reminds me of when we lived with my parents during the 2020 lockdown, and it kind of just started. I'm not sure where the idea came from, but it resulted in every Sunday service that was recorded, the service leader that was kind of curating it would find clips of people. Well, people would send them clips, like a little video of them being passed communion and then passing it on out of the shot. And
that's awesome.
And they'd take some and then pass it on, and it would just be like, person after person sharing communion. Love it. Online. And obviously it just had this beautiful way of saying, hey, even though we're physically apart, communion is still this beautiful representation of the body of Christ that we're a part of. And to pass it off screen, and then someone else in a different house, receiving it, and it was really meaningful.
That's awesome. I think with services, if any of you guys are involved in kind of curating a service, it's so easy to involve the people in your church because of phones and cloud-based things these days. It's amazing to have your church family involved in that.
To just grab an iPhone, do a little video, upload it, use the link,
and just hope your editor's okay with it.
So getting super practical. Are there any other tips you have in terms of things going smoothly with the, with when you're actually getting your band together and setting up and like recording something outside of, I guess, a normal church setting? Any other little tips?
I think preparation is key. Preparation is probably more key for recording. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Preparation is key for both recording and in person. But I felt that it's probably more key for recording because it's some of our team who have been part of sessions of recording, whether it's on stage or in homes, have just been like, oh my goodness, like it totally exposes like my lack of lyric knowledge, or like or I don't really know that harmony or those chords, and it's there and you hear it. So I think preparation is just super important, knowing especially if you're playing with other people. If you're by yourself, you can probably get away with whatever, but if you're playing with other people, setting up a band, making sure you know your structure. When we come to the practical section, you know, the last part is kind of what would it look like to pre-record in a church context, like a full band with your fancy sound desk and things like that. When it comes to recording in that context, I found that actually using click and track really helps with the quality of what happens, and also helps to sync multiple takes if you need to do that. So just a lot of preparation, but then again, you know, I'm kind of holding all of this really gently and offering it as like, God uses everything, you know, he doesn't, you know, need it to be this beautiful picture.
Perfect, technologically
exactly
advanced thing.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's I guess the other thing I'd love for you to share would be those different ways that we can film and record a song for a live stream or for a pre-recorded service. On any budget, because I know that people watching or listening will be in all different contexts, and some of them will have access to amazing gear, and some of them will just have a phone.
Yeah, totally.
And so how do we go about kind of preparing or doing this kind of thing with a few options.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yep, 3 options for us today.
Love it.
And you're onto it with the phone situation. So option 1, and I'll just go through this kind of briefly. Option 1 is just grabbing your phone, just assuming most people these days have smartphones, and just kind of placing it somewhere where there's some really good light coming through a window. Lighting is key for anything to do with smartphones. And you probably won't have like fancy lights like we have here at Pathways. And then just playing in front of it, recording, super easy, and you can just chuck it up.
So get the audio and the video through the phone.
Audio and video through the phone.
Yep.
The closer you are to the phone, the better the audio will be. If you want to step that up a little bit, if you have someone else in your house who has another phone, or you have access to another phone, that's even better. So setting up one phone, use your back camera. Because your back camera is always better than the selfie one. Yep. Set up your back camera like that, and then have your other phone kind of close. So if I was playing from here and I was grabbing the guitar, have the other phone kind of close to you, recording audio. So video from that camera there, audio from here. Obviously testing the audio and the levels are important, so just push it away if you're too loud, bring it closer if you're not. That just means that the audio is a bit cleaner, and then what you have to do after that is just get some video editing software, something really simple, and just like syncing it together online, and then you'll have better quality audio and an okay video.
And epic tip that I learnt just now is that you clap, right?
Yeah,
so
clap for syncing.
So you can exactly sync kind of, this is from someone who doesn't know much about videography. So a clap will help you sync the video and the audio.
Claps
Genius.
always help. Yeah, exactly. But if you forget it and there's only one of you, it's okay. You'll probably figure it out in the back end. Cool. So that is option 1. Option 2 is a small investment. So you could have a phone set up as your camera, or you can find some sort of DSLR camera that people usually have lying around. Anything kind of, any kind of DSLR will probably do a good job. Though cameras on your phones are pretty good these days. So option 2 is probably more about the audio investment. What I've learned actually is that there's a lot of grace for poor video quality online, but there's a little bit less grace for poor audio quality. So actually people tend to click off if they can't hear things really well. But if they can't see it, it's okay, especially for music. So there's a tip there. So I brought in this kind of thing, which is called an audio interface. So you can get them from like $140. And what it does is it kind of you plug in like a mic or something, and then it takes it into your computer. So it's just a way for it to translate those audio signals into your computer.
Great.
So that's just like a 2-channel one. So you can have a mic and a guitar, or a mic and a keyboard recording at the same time. And then when it comes to like a microphone, you can get something like this, which is like what they call a condenser microphone. I won't tell you the specifics because I don't know. But just generally, like quality wise for recording, it's pretty good.
And the pop filter, huh?
And the pop filter that helps you not go.
Yeah.
So that's cool too. But that's pretty pricey. An investment. So if you didn't want to, you could probably just go sneak into your church and borrow one of these, which, a Shure kind of SM58 is the usual. But then there's ones like these that are like Sennheiser. Just kind of your dynamic mic that you would use live. That's probably okay as well. It's much better than a phone or anything like that. So that's a good option. That'll probably be just sitting at your church. And then you just need your kind of usual jack for a guitar or keys, and you can plug it all in here, and it goes into your computer through a USB. And then you need just like what they call a digital audio workstation, so something like GarageBand or Logic, or there's some kind of like free options like Audacity, Ableton Live Lite, things like that cool. You could use to just do a draft mix, and there's lots of tutorials online on how to do that. So that's option 2.
Cool.
And then option 3 would be a larger investment / using your church's kind of sound system, depending on what kind of church you're at. But most churches would have something a bit bigger than this if you have a whole band there. So when we're talking about video, that could be like a multi-camera setup. So you've got a full band, or you've got a small band, whatever. You've got maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 DSLR cameras. One could be on the drums, one could be on a couple of the singers, that kind of thing. And you're kind of cutting in and out of them either live if you have the software, or post-production later on. But for audio, you're using like a sound desk that goes through something that could be like what they call a Dante network. It's getting real nerdy now, eh? Like,
I love it. I'm all for it.
And what it does and what you need is to record separate tracks of every kind of instrument channel. So you want each vocalist track individually, so you can put it into your digital audio workstation later.
Okay, as opposed to kind of mixing it on the sound desk and just sending through one signal.
Yeah. So you could do that, and that works so a lot of sound desks probably will have, they record kind of sermons through like a USB. You kind of plug it in a sound desk and you just take whatever's like your front of house mix. So you could do that. That's one option if you don't want to do post-production mixing. Or even better than that, it's just taking all the individual tracks, so you can kind of add effects and that kind of thing. Awesome. Later on. So there's different ways to do that. You either a Dante network, or there's some kind of like Allen Heath desks, or the Behringer X32, which are really common, that can just record all the separate tracks into like a USB or something like that. You just take that USB and pull all those tracks into your software, and then you can play.
Wow.
So that's real fun. And then I think I alluded to that before. If you're going for this model, which is the larger investment option 3 model, I found that using a click and cues, if you want to, really helpful, so that if you do need to do multiple takes for whatever reason, technology fails, or you just want another take of the song, it becomes really easy to sync your cameras together. So you use the same, you can use like double the number of shots, because you've got 2 takes that are exactly the same, if that kind of makes sense.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, if you're not doing too many crazy ad-libs and things like that. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, does that help?
Wow. Yeah, totally. And it's awesome that you've got these 3 options. I'm thinking about option 1, because some people I know would say, okay, to get the best audio, you need to get into a closet or a wardrobe.
Yep.
Is that necessary?
I think that's it's true. I think because of the way that the clothes and stuff kind of diffuse the sound.
So it needs to be a
cupboard
cupboard with clothes.
Yeah, usually that's what they say. Yes, because it's that walls and stuff bounce the sound around. But I don't think so. Like, I think, you kind of work with what you have. I think that would be probably more for like this kind of recording if you're using this kind of mic, a condenser mic, where you really, really want a clean sound. But if you're kind of just going for like an authentic worship experience and not intending to like record it and put it on Spotify or something like that, then I think it's okay.
Yeah. Great. Good to know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Oh man.
And yeah, it's just awesome to explore, I guess, this whole new space that we find ourselves in.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. And I think, at Grace City, we talk a little bit about how hybrid church is the future, having both in-person and online options, and not just like streaming a service out, but actually curating a service for an online congregation that actually might choose to just stay online forever. Yeah. They may never step foot into your church, but they feel really connected and part of your church. So it's a really interesting space to be in, and my experience is small, and others will have kind of their own experiences, but I think the church is in a really interesting space, and I think we can do so much more for the kingdom, I think, when we think about this online space as well.
I remember at the start of 2020 thinking, wow, with so many churches now offering, a way to connect online, there are people who don't know Jesus, who will not want to walk into a church for whatever reason, and yet they could so easily, tune in online and hear truth and hear love and hear about the good news of the gospel, right? So it is exciting. The reach, people are so much more online than we've used to be, and it's exciting that we get to share the gospel there as well.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
So
online definitely needs the gospel.
Yes, we do. Awesome. Cool. Well, hey, thanks for your time, and thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And ka kite anō.
Ka kite.